We should remember that God uses evil men, good men, godless men, and secular infrastructures to fund and facilitate kingdom work. You're like, no, what in the world does that mean? Here's what I mean. Paul was a very busy man, traveling, running, planting, discipling, preaching. He had a lot of stuff going on. And what I don't think Paul realized is that God had things for Paul to do that weren't on Paul's agenda. And so what God did was intervene in a way Paul wouldn't have wished on anyone, and Paul couldn't maybe even ascertain and discern as the hand of God in such a way that God used evil men, some good men, some godless men, and a secular infrastructure to fund and facilitate kingdom work. What do I mean? Well, verse 11 of chapter 23, 20 through, my number, 20 almost through. God said, "Take courage, Paul, as you have testified about me in Jerusalem, so you must also testify about me in Rome." And then it would be reasonable to ask, how in the world is God going to get Paul to Rome safely without being murdered by men who have made a pact to kill him along the way? Well, God did it by using 1,000 Roman soldiers to make sure he was safely transported. So the Roman infrastructure is in place. They've built roads. They've built highways and byways and pit stops and hotels and gas stations and mini marts. And they have all these soldiers, and God's like, I'm going to use Roman soldiers with spears and swords and chariots and horses, and I'm going to get my boy to my place for my date on my time, and I'm going to get him there in style. You can do your whole plot against me thing in the bushes. I'm going to escort Paul there by Roman centurion guard like he's royalty. That's pretty cool. And then he puts Paul up in like the Roman Marriott on Rome's dime, so that for 2 years, all Paul has time to do is sit and think and reason with a very intelligent and godless head of state and write letters to the Christian church that would be read for the next 2,000 years. All funded by a godless Caesar. Think how much fundraising Paul would have had to do of the poor Christian churches to accomplish it. God's like, you know what? I got this. I'll dip into the Roman pot, and I'll fund this whole thing. Isn't that incredible? And so you read these seemingly pointless details of trials and plots and pointless conversation after pointless conversation and accusations. What's this all about? And what you don't want to do is in the weeds lose the plot of the God who oversees all things. You want to back up and go, my gosh, look at this. God is using evil men, godless men, and a secular infrastructure to fund his kingdom building. Friends, God's never on the ropes. God's never on his heels. God's never playing defense. God's never caught off guard. He's using, and I'm preaching this to myself because I'm like, what's that about? And how dare they? And God, what's happening? And why isn't this going faster? And so I'm preaching to myself. Sometimes God's doing his own thing in his own way that we can't see. And we got to remember that there's nobody on the planet that doesn't functionally serve as a servant and a water boy in God's kingdom. And that's just a wonderfully comforting fact, I think, for the church as we move into negative world reality. Hey everybody, hope you found that helpful. If you would like to watch the sermon that clip came from, you can go here, check it out. As well, if you'd like to watch more Bible teaching, you can go to my YouTube channel. And if you would like more free resources for your family, your marriage, and how to be a stronger man, you can go to strongmannation.com. Check it out.